Welcome to another episode of Relentlessly Resilient, where real people share real life experiences and the tools they've developed to move forward and live their best life. I'm Michelle Scharf.
And I'm Jennie Taylor, and today we are back. It is the new year when we are recording this, and we're excited to have with us today a mutual friend that both of us know named Ryan Wilcox. He's soon to be Representative Ryan Wilcox in the Utah House of Legislature, which he already was a few years ago, and maybe he'll mention that in his intro. But Ryan, thanks for being with us. We're grateful that you'll join us and tell us a little bit of your story, for a little bit of backstory before the story. Ryan and my husband were good friends. I know Ryan knows Michelle through politics, so we've kind of got some connections there. But it was barely a little over a year ago, Christmas of 2019, when I heard some devastating news that many of us who know and love Ryan and his family heard, and that was about this tragic car accident he had been in. And I remember walking into that hospital room, seeing him not long after that and thinking, oh my goodness, will you be okay? So Ryan, we're grateful that you're here to join us and share a little bit of the story, the accident, what happened, what's happened since. If you were to see Ryan today, you'd never have guessed. I mean, honestly, I picture him in that hospital bed. I picture him, I saw him last night with my family, and completely never would have thought that he's been through what he's been through. So there's
I remember those early pictures. I was like, whoa.
And just, I think that's the whole moral of this podcast is there's more to the story. There's more to the story than what you see. Here's this statesman who's been elected to public office. He's going to go back to the legislative session in just a few weeks here and do the people's business on the Hill in Salt Lake. And yet he's been through this quite a journey for the past year that most of us have no clue about. So Ryan, I'm going to let you kind of introduce yourself and give us a little bit of content, and then let's hear your journey.
Sure. Yeah. I've thought about this question, where to start with this story. The common phrase is hindsight is 20/20. I hate that that's sort of been used as a joke.
Yeah, with new 2020
as we started.
We're all just grateful 2020 is in hindsight. Yeah.
But the original understanding of that, has been running through my mind quite a bit. What has the year been like? Going through the holiday season again. Obviously, I've had a lot of time to think about the progress that I've made and really all that's happened. But this story starts probably in September of 2019. One night in mid-September, it seemed I probably not much different than any other night. About 3 a.m, I woke up screaming. Just yelled. That's what my wife said. I sat up in bed, and she said I yelled no, at the top of my lungs, and didn't know what was going on, but I just had a nightmare. And, I don't tend to have a lot of nightmares. Certainly not ones where I wake up half the house. So we sat up and talked about it, and she asked what was happening. And in the dream, I had just been in a car accident.
Wow.
And I couldn't stop it. It was like I was watching it happen, as if I were outside the vehicle, kind of watching myself, which is very strange to have a dream. And I'm not, I don't necessarily believe in dreams, or I don't know. I don't think they all mean something, right?
Right.
But I sort of, Christina my wife is very patient, and, like it was just a dream, like you tell your kids when they have a nightmare.
Yeah. It's okay, honey. Go back to
honey,
sleep.
It's okay.
I'm right here. You're fine.
Exactly. And I think every parent has done that at some point with their child. But that was very much the role Christina took on that night, and I sort of forgot about it completely. December 19th, 2019, Christina's grandfather, Stan, had just passed away. And that was the day of his funeral. And so I had to work in Bountiful, and that's where the funeral was anyway. And so I met everybody at the funeral, and it was just a sobering day, like it is when a loved one passes away. Stan is a wonderful, wonderful grandfather. Like just, one of those family members who, immediately felt like he was already part of your family. So, reminded me of my own grandfathers, and just so wise and just a wonderful person. So it was quite a hard thing to lose him. And, we left the funeral. I went and took care of some work things, and was, because I didn't drive with the family, I was alone after that on the way back to Ogden, back home. And it was snowing lightly. I remember that. I remember getting onto the freeway in Bountiful. And, I was pretty upset that I didn't know what happened next. I still don't really. I pieced together, what other people have said, but I have no memory of the accident itself. And looking back, I think that's probably a good thing. It's probably not something I'd want to remember every detail.
And have that replay through your mind, and
right.
The opposite of a dream, but the vision of that.
Yeah, it can cause problems with like driving in the future and anxiety and stuff like that.
So I remember getting on the freeway, I think in Woods Cross, and then I do have one memory, pre-accident, and that is I was conscious the moment before it happened. And so the moment before it happened, I knew that something was going to happen. I remember seeing, like a big red wall, vehicle or something, and it turns out that it was like I don't even know what kind of SUV it was, but I know that the part that clipped my car in half was a big red excursion kind of vehicle. It was very large. And I was driving, of course, a little, my commuter car, the one I drove around the state for the Senate in. So the accident happens. There's like, I think 3 cars involved. Somebody hit my one side, and I ended up into a brick wall of people that were in a parked lane at full speed. The impact was hard enough that even though I had a seatbelt on and the airbags went off, I still ended up partially into the windshield.
Oh my goodness.
So the car was basically cut in half. The entire front end of my vehicle was gone. So the engine was shattered into a billion pieces, and the front end was just gone. And I didn't wake up immediately. There was a couple of just sort of amazing things looking back on the experience that shouldn't have been able to happen. I'm not sure how they did still. But one of the next memory I have is of a man who I still don't have any idea who this person was. I don't know if he was a bystander or if he was involved somehow, or if he was just one of those awesome people that seemed to show up at the right moment. But there was a guy that came to the driver's side window, and somehow he got me awake, and he asked me if there was anyone that he could call for me. And he said the ambulance is on its way. So either he had already called or someone else had. And he asked if there's somebody to call. I said, yeah, I got to call my wife. And I remembered a number, so I told him the number and called. So Christina got to find out from me instead of the police, instead of the hospital.
Instead of a knock on the door or a phone call, yeah.
Or a knock on the door, yeah. And I thought about that, Jenny. Like, I mean, you're sort of forced to when you're in that situation, and after, the thing with Brent. I mean,
right.
And we just lost the year before. My goodness. Anyway, so yeah, so I remember that part of the conversation. You okay? No. She could tell from my voice, right? I'm calling from some stranger's phone.
Right, but you were coherent enough. You could make the phone call. You hadn't lost consciousness.
Yeah, the stranger made the phone call.
Okay.
With his phone. Yeah.
And then but you voiced the call. He did not say, "I'm standing here with your husband." You spoke with Christina.
I think he might have said that, but I did talk to Christina.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the one that told her that, are you okay? No, I've been in an accident. Is it bad? Yes. Where are you? I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Those parts of the conversation. But we're sort of funny, and I think probably a lot of couples do this, or families do this. Like, we all GPS stalk each other, right?
Sure.
So I always know where she is and where all the kids are, and my mom and dad don't know where we're at, and I know where mom and dad are at, and all that stuff. Just
because your phone shares that information. Sure. Yeah,
well, just in case. We go a second level. Like, we have apps that I pay for that also do it better than the.
So she knew exactly where you were. Did you at the time know which hospital you were being taken to? Did you have a say in that, or
Jennie,
where were you?
That's one of the. Okay, so then I black out again. Okay, so I finished that part of the conversation with Christina. I black out again, and the next memory I have is when they're loading me into the ambulance.
Okay.
So I'm not conscious now for the accident itself. I have no memory of that. And I have no memory of them pulling me out of the wreck, which again would have been
probably better,
excruciatingly painful if I had been conscious.
Oh my goodness.
Well, it's merciful your body just said, you know what, go to sleep. You know, I mean, let's tune out for this for a minute.
Yeah, and especially given, and I'll tell you what the surgeon said later about that moment. But anyway, so as I'm being loaded into the ambulance, all of a sudden I'm awake again, and that's the moment where I realized that this is what I dreamt.
Oh my gosh!
Oh wow!
Wait a minute! I've been here.
Yeah,
I've been in this ambulance, and I immediately recognized the guy next to me, who was the paramedic.
Yeah,
I already know his name. He asked me the question he asked me in the dream, where he says, "What hospital do you want to go to?" And I say, "Well, I work for Intermountain Healthcare. It'd be private. I'd take me to Layton Hospital." And he says, "You're going to need more surgeons than that."
Wow. So that meant you needed to go to McKay.
Yeah. He goes, "You got to go to Ogden Regional or McKay." Yeah. I said, "Well, take me to McKay." And then I pass out again. And so when I woke up screaming is right after that conversation of the dream, because in my dream, I thought I had just died.
Wow.
So they take you to the hospital. You are, at this point, you know it's bad enough you need surgeons, not a surgeon, but several medical providers. Can you tell us what the laundry list of ailments turned out to be, and at what point were you given that information or told kind of, hey, here's what happened, here's how bad off you are?
Oh, goodness. It's so strange, Jennie and Michelle. One of the things I do for Intermountain is I work with our patient experience team. And the day before, I had been in this big meeting in Salt Lake where we're talking about, how do we make sure, how do we really understand what patients are experiencing, how we communicate with them to help them to understand so they ultimately can heal faster, right? Like all these strategy sessions about this. And then the next afternoon, all of a sudden I'm there.
Here's your chance to get firsthand experience.
Oh my goodness.
Way to take your job seriously, Ryan. Like, you're dedicated.
So I'm wheeled into the emergency room at McKay, and I woke up again while I was in the ER. And as I look up, my dad's already there. Christina's there. My boss is already there. So Christina's already called my boss. And immediately, they're just there. My brother showed up within a few minutes. And so I already got like this support staff that's there praying for me and watching it. I can't move anything. And I don't really know what's going on. My eyes swollen shut. Turns out the left upper part of my head that took the brunt of the facial damage. I had shattered my nose and all that structure. We thought I had lost my eye at that point because it was all, what happens when it goes into a windshield to your head. And I'd lost hair that had been shaved off. Anyway, that part of my head wasn't doing well. And then it had 4 broken ribs and a shattered pelvis was like the really big one they were worried about. I had broken knees, broken elbow, hands were completely destroyed, broken and needing stitches and all that kind of stuff. So really at that point in the ER, the most painful part is they were trying to pull the glass out of everything. So I was conscious, but they were trying to manually pull the glass out of my face. And,
wow.
And, my dad, my brother, and my boss had a moment there where they were able to give me a blessing, right? Because of the conversation with Christina. It was another, personal blessing for me. It was being not just to have them there, but they were able to do what they could to help me to be calm and to be at peace with where I was at the moment. Yeah. A couple of things that were unique about that. We had, and this will feed into, I think, the largest lesson of this for me later. When they rolled me in to get the MRI, you got to think, the situation that a patient would be in if they're in an emergency room to get an MRI, right? It's not a good thing if you're going there to get that done. But right as I was about to get rolled into that, machine, right above it, somebody had hand painted one of the ceiling tiles, and it was like clouds. I can't remember exactly what the painting was, but it was clouds. It was a beautiful, peaceful sky. So somebody had really thought about what they were going to put there.
I've seen that.
You've seen it from that perspective, or you've seen it?
I've been in that. Yes, I've been in that MRI machine.
Oh yes. Okay, so I don't know if it had the same effect as you, but when I was laying there, strapped to the bed, completely immobilized, and getting ready to walk in or to be rolled into that thing, it brought me just a sense of peace, and I could see that somebody had really put effort in to help to understand what a patient might be thinking. And so instead of looking at dirty ceiling tiles or whatever it was, that did it for me at that moment. That helped calm me down and just to sort of let go. The surgeries that they had to, this is sort of sad. My femur was jacked up enough. They had to sort of break it again. They had to drill a steel pole through it and pull it out away from my pelvis so that they could do the big surgery the next day.
Oh my goodness, that sounds
that
terrible, excruciating.
It's the classic stuff you don't want to be around for. They pull out a drill, drill this equipment into either side of your leg, and then they attach weights to it. They go over the edge of your bed so that it pulls.
Oh my gosh,
the bone out. Yeah, I mean it's amazing technology. But yeah.
But a painful procedure.
Yeah.
Not super fun.
So all of this is within hours of the accident? This is still the same night. All right.
Yeah, still the same night.
Seems like an awful lot to have to deal with in one evening.
Cram into a day. Ryan, we're going to take a quick break and come back, and we want you to then tell us, so then what? You've been in this horrific accident. You've got a list a mile long of everything that's broken or not fully functioning. They're running tests. They're hooking you up to terrible, painful apparatuses that are going to save your life, which is great, but ow, that hurts. Then we want to hear kind of where the journey goes from there. Fortunately, you've lived. We're grateful your life was spared. It sounds like the car did not make it out. But we'll be back in a minute to hear what happens next. All right, and we're back with our friend Ryan Wilcox, who has just started telling us of kind of the aftermath of this horrific car accident he was in right before Christmas of 2019. He's given us quite a laundry list of the injuries, the procedures, getting an MRI, picking glass out of his head, broken stitches everywhere. Ryan, walk us through what happens next. This is still the same day. This is still December 19th, that night. Yeah. Help us know what happens next.
So most of the repair work was the next day. They scheduled me for the next morning for the big surgery, pending the, whatever you call the thing that they drilled into my leg to pull it, as long as that would work was the plan. But that seemed to do the job. The next day, I think we had it scheduled for about 4 hours. It went 7.5.
Oh, wow.
3 to 4 hours, I think is what the plan was. It went 7.5 on the surgery itself. And that really was due to the fact that my femoral artery was compromised. And this is after the surgery, probably the most revealing thing to me. Because, when you're having the surgery, you're just completely knocked out. They take care of that, and you wake up sometime after, and you hear the story. But surgeon came in and said, Ryan, he goes, really the reason why it was so hard is because everything was so broken in there and so torn through. Because, when you shatter bone like that, it just rips through, through the flesh.
And it's not just a clean break like, I snapped my arm bone or my leg bone or something. You've shattered things. You've smashed it with the impact of that accident.
Oh, yeah. There's, right now, for example, there's, I think, 5-6 different plates inside my pelvis, and then 16 or 17 screws. Like, that'll be there forever.
Forever.
Like holding all that stuff together. So pretty cool x-rays.
Yeah.
But the surgeon said, when he came out, he goes, Ryan, it took so long because you were about 1 millimeter away from severing your femoral artery. Because if they'd have turned you the wrong way, pulling you out of the accident, you wouldn't have made it to the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
My goodness. Kind of conversation. So he just, I think he was trying to pump me up, just like so somebody's looking out for you. Just a reminder, Ryan.
Yeah, just you're still here.
You're still here.
Yeah.
He goes, but that's really what took me so long, is that I had to be so careful around that. If I had nicked it. Yeah. He's trying to explain it, almost like he was, and this was fascinating too about so many of my caregivers. They were almost like they were apologizing to me. Right. And so it sort of felt like he was like, oh, I'm sorry it took so long.
You're like, dude, you just saved my life. I think it's okay.
And the reality is, I'm thinking, you're a genius. Thank you for saving my leg and my life. But
I think that speaks to the compassion of those caregivers that work in those trauma situations. Think of the trauma that surgeon faced in knowing he held your life in his hands, and his training and his experience and his reaction to that moment is literally going to either keep you alive or not. What an incredible profession for people to undertake, and what a high stress level.
Oh, he saved my left leg. I mean, he operated on my knee at the same time that he did the big surgery on the pelvis. There's nothing you can do really for broken ribs other than they get hurt for a while. And I think I had about 1,000 stitches.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
All of the other things. The nose surgery would come in February. That wasn't required for life saving.
Sure.
It was just, you have to deal with it later. And I've since had a follow up with that. But really, I think the lesson of this whole thing for me is, Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, they take me out of the ICU. I'm ready to move to inpatient rehab, which is just, maybe a different floor, I guess, technically, at the hospital. So they moved me into this room on Christmas Eve. And all of a sudden it hits me. And I'd had, a friend that brought me a mini Christmas tree while I was in the ICU. Just beautiful, things. Somebody brought me tinsel, and my cousin came and did things like that. And when they moved me into the other room, that's when it really hit me that, oh my gosh, I somehow ruined Christmas and my kids and all this panic that we already have as parents, right? Like November hits and we're like, oh shoot, I gotta get stuff together.
And as the wife of a widow, I'm thinking, oh, what a blessing that you didn't ruin Christmas, that your life was spared.
That you lived to see Christmas.
Right.
Yeah.
I can see as a parent how you would feel that way or think that way. But as a wife that's lost a husband and having children, I would think, oh my God, what a blessing that he was spared, that he's still here and he's still with us.
That you haven't ruined every future Christmas.
Yeah, that we've got a journey to go on. But this Christmas has been saved and hopefully many more to come.
Yeah. And, that next, Christine and I last year, ironically, our whole plan for Christmas was to go to Disneyland.
Oh, well, then you did ruin Christmas.
We hadn't been since
and now you can't go to
2011.
Disneyland. And then 2020 happened and said you're never going to Disneyland.
No.
Oh, Ryan.
It was scheduled in January.
Yeah.
So we didn't do anything else. Like it was this giant California vacation. We were doing San Diego, Disney, Universal. That was it. And we'd saved up for it, and that was our big thing. And
instead, your kids spent Christmas with you at the hospital?
We still did it. We didn't know what else to do. So in the middle of the night, Christina and my friends conspired to bring the Disney stuff to my room.
Oh.
So it was set up in my room. And, like at 6 a.m, Christina left and went home. So she was home with the kids. And I don't even know who was staying with them. Like, I know that tons of friends and my family and others that, were helping her at the house and doing those things. I don't even know who to say thank you to.
Sure. I know exactly how you feel. Yeah. 100%. All the people who just show up and get things done when you're not capable of doing that.
But I got to tell you, it was the most beautiful Christmas I've ever had. It was perfect.
Yeah.
So the kids all showed up Christmas morning, and they were all super excited. And I think, Michelle, that's really when it hit us with what you just said, right? It could have been a very different Christmas. I think that's really when it hit all of us.
Yeah.
That I had made it. I was in the rehab unit now. Up to that point, they had only seen me in the ICU. Right. Which is just scary for kids. Especially.
Right. You've at least been moved to a point where now it feels like a matter of time rather than a matter of life and death.
Yeah. Yep.
So what's the journey been like? I mean, like I said, if you were to see you today, people who know you today, and when you show up on Capitol Hill at the end of this month and through the legislative session, you're not going to think, oh my goodness, this man has a mangled body that's held together by 1,000 stitches and dozens of screws. So you've clearly journeyed quite a bit. I imagine that journey's not done after 1 year, but it seems to me as an outsider, you have made remarkable physical progress. Can you tell us about the physical journey and then also maybe kind of the emotions that go with being in need of having that kind of a journey?
Yeah. Wow. So physically, every day, when you're in that position where you're strapped to a bed for weeks at a time, it's you're suddenly very aware that you're completely dependent on others to do right for anything. Right? It's not just to bring you food; it's to use the bathroom. It's to raise your arm because it's literally anything.
How long were you in the hospital? How long before they sent you home?
3.5 weeks.
Okay. Which I imagine is pretty remarkable considering. I mean, it sounds like a very long time and also a very short time considering everything you faced.
Yeah, just under a month. And, I was in, the condition of going home. I was in a wheelchair for 3-4 months after that. And, learning to walk again was quite the experience. One of the benchmarks I had to hit before they would let me leave was being able to get up 3 stairs and, by myself, theoretically, although they never let anyone.
But wait a second, you're in a wheelchair and you've got to be able to get up 3 chairs to go home?
Yes, because we don't have a ramp. I have 3 steps.
Oh, into your home.
To get into the house. And so they have this thing built in the rehab unit. They said, okay, you have to be able to get up these stairs. And so without putting any weight, I wasn't allowed to put any weight on the right leg. And the left leg is the one that had the knee surgery. So it was one of these things like, I don't know how to explain it when you don't have the ability to use your limbs to somebody that, like, I couldn't have understood it before I went into it. But, it's just all your arms. And so my little brother, John, I still don't know who did this. I don't know who paid for it. I don't know. All I know is it's some connection to my little brother. They came and they built a railing on my front steps so that I could come home. And it was like the one that I'd been practicing with in the hospital. So I figured it out where they had, I had one of the crutches under the other side. And if I could use that railing, then I could sort of hop up a stair. And I don't know, other than to explain, it took like 5 or 6 seconds, maybe 10 seconds to hop one stair. It seems silly now, but it was a major win for me when that last week made it up the stairs by myself.
That is amazing. Ryan, we're going to have to take a break. This is an amazing story. Just, it can happen to any of us. But one of the things we take for granted every day is the fact that we get in our cars. It's the most dangerous thing any of us do every single day, is get in our car and drive. What a tale of just a tragic accident, ending up in a surgery that should have been 3 hours, going 7 hours. But so grateful that you were not picked up and twisted and moved the wrong way and could have died and bled out really on the way to the hospital without anyone really understanding what had happened to you. Just amazing injuries. The shattered pelvis, your knees broken, your left leg has to have surgery. You've got 1,000 stitches, and the list is huge. And it's pretty incredible. When we come back, we want to hear more from you about how did you withstand the mental battle that had to take place in overcoming. Yes, you have your life and you're grateful for it and all of those things. But how do you deal with, because we know that there's got to be an awful lot of pain included in this. And, we just want to hear from you on how did you get up and face it every day, and how did you manage that pain, and how did you find a way through it? And then I'd like to hear a little bit more about what your plans are for this year and the legislature and what you plan to do with really a new opportunity at seeing life from a new way. We'll be right back. And we're back with Ryan. Very excited to talk to you today. This is just, I remember seeing the pictures. I actually don't know if you know this because you've said it several times during this podcast that you don't even know who to thank. But I did donate to a GoFundMe that I think Dan Duell put together. Yeah. And I did reach out to you at one point, and I sent you a message and you responded, and Chris, I think Christine actually responded to me first because you weren't able to. And just having you in my heart and my prayers, and just being so grateful that you were not taken from your family. We haven't really known each other on a super personal level. I don't know all your children. I've seen them at some political functions, but you have a beautiful family. I've met your wife several times, and you're just good people. You can see it. Your hearts are good. And I'm just so glad that you are able to be here, be a father to to your children. And I just want to hear more. How did you get up and face the day with all of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that, we don't talk about the mental aspects of trauma a lot. And that's probably what I appreciate most about your podcast, actually. Yeah. Is that we're facilitating that conversation. And I think part of the reason why we don't talk about it is because we don't understand it, number one. But number two, because there's still sort of a weird stigma about it. Right. About admitting that it's part of the process. Sure. But the reality is, part of the reason why I told you about Christmas. The previous October, I had been wandering through, we were at Desert Book for something, and wandering through, and a painting caught my eye that I hadn't noticed before. It was a Greg Olson painting, and I've got one of his in our home already, and I've seen a lot of his over the years, but it was one I'd never seen before. And this painting, the Savior he's looking over Jerusalem. Like he's there, he can see it, but he's not really looking towards the city, and there's grass on the hillside, and his eyes are closed, and he's just standing there with his hands open. And I bought it when we saw it in October, because I thought, it's sort of cool, it looks different, and forgot about it. And completely unaware until Christmas night, Christmas Day, I guess, when we were opening presents. There was one last present. And I'm like, well, what's that one? I didn't remember it at all. and they had wrapped it up, and my oldest daughter, Reagan, was holding it, and the kids helped, unwrap it because I can't unwrap anything. So they wrapped and unwrapped. But as it pulled down the wrapping paper, again, laying there staring up at this thing, and I see the painting, and I see what it is, and then Reagan says the words, "Be still."
So beautiful.
And that's the title of the painting. She was reading it off the back. And immediately the tears just start flowing down. And, all these memories, like I don't know if you guys remember when Speaker Lockhart passed away. We were friends there, and they asked me to sing at her funeral at the Capitol, and that's the song that they wanted to sing. Be still. When Eric Ellsworth, our highway patrolman, passed away, and they called and asked if I would sing that one, that's the song they wanted me to sing. Just to be still. And so, in that moment, that seemingly innocuous, I'm sure it was a prompting from the other side when I bought it, because I didn't think about it twice. But at that moment, the whole thing just let go. I had been fighting the entire time. Fighting this whole process, just sort of angry and understanding, trying to control things that I had no control over. And at that moment, I finally was able to let it go. Just hand it over. And that's what he was doing. That's in the painting. That's what I saw.
That's beautiful.
And, so that's for mentally. I don't know how to. That changed my perspective that day. I had all sorts of friends calling me and visiting, and I thought about that in terms of so many others who this year. If that had happened this year. We don't have Christmas in my hotel room. That's funny. It felt like that, and you lived there for so long in my hospital room.
Right. Well, you couldn't even have visitors right now. I mean, the COVID situation makes it so isolating on top of the physical and emotional trauma.
Which would have added just another layer of trauma because, how do you fight when you don't have the support team around you and when you're not able to see the faces of the ones you love?
Oh,
it's tough.
So then, the follow-up to that question, the process is a long one. And so that gets me through, I think, most of the holidays until I was released from the hospital and got to come home. Again, my little little brother modifying my bathroom so that I could come home. He spent his anniversary in my bathroom, remodeling it so that I could go from the wheelchair to the bathroom, to the shower, so that I could live with my family. They redid my daughter's bedroom across from the bathroom so that I could, get from there across the hall. And that's where I basically lived for the next, 3 or 4 months to get around. But, there's a couple of mild points along this path that were super significant. One is learning to walk again, like to really walk again. And, I have a good friend here, Andy Curry. He's the director of our local handicap outreach center. And he was in a similar accident 25 years ago, and he'll never walk again. And he came to the hospital and, helped me get the equipment that I needed to make this and transition to home and hopefully pull out of this thing. But the most miraculous part of the therapy for me was an underwater treadmill, of all things. I don't know if you guys have ever seen or heard of these things, but
I saw the videos you shared of your physical therapy on that. I had never heard of it or seen it before.
Yeah, so McKay has one in their North Campus, and that's where they sent me. But when you've been confined and you haven't walked like at all for 4 months,
yeah, your muscles are just gone.
Yeah, it's so strange, but the water takes all the weight off, right? Like as it does when you get in, and they lower you down into the water, and then they can control exactly how fast. And so that very first moment that your legs start working, that moment was a huge mental milestone, for me.
When you could feel the motion in your legs free of that weight, because obviously you couldn't weight bear yet, but you could at least feel movement and think, wait a sec, that's my body and it's moving how it should. Yeah, what a huge victory.
I laughed with joy to the therapist.
Oh, I love that.
That's the thing. I'm like, they're like, what? And I'm like, my leg is moving.
Whoever knew what a victory that would be.
Oh my goodness, it was incredible. And I'll always remember that. And frankly, I will always love those caregivers. We're friends on Facebook, and I see them every once in a while, and they're always the women who help me walk. Right.
Right.
So that was a huge one. And then really, Michelle, to answer your question, the mental stuff, I think for the first, I don't want to say 6 months. So even, I had the other big surgery in February, and they reconstructed my face, and there's only so much you can do to fix that thing anyway. So, everything didn't go right. I'll just say it that way. I got an infection. I ended up back in the ER. When you do sensitive surgeries like that, one of the number one rules is you don't bump it, right?
Yeah.
And one of my kids, and this is a hard lesson, so anybody has this out there, be careful. But we had just given the lecture to the kids when they brought me home from the hospital about, hey, don't bump dad. Like, really, you can't. And he's being so careful to try to avoid that. He turned and tried to hug me on the side, and I didn't realize what he was doing. And I turned right into where he was going. So that ended up causing the need for an additional surgery that I just had 3 weeks ago.
Oh my goodness.
So, but the mental part of this is not necessarily the bad things that have happened or the things that have been hard. I think it's really in being able to talk through where I'm at, in being consciously aware of what I can and can't do, in saying no when I need to say no, and then not being afraid to say, hey, I need to talk to somebody. Like, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to, I still, at this point, a year later, I can't run. Like, the doctor said I would never run again. And I think I joked with him at the time. I said, well, that's okay, because I hate it. So rock on. As long as I can run the bases, I would tell him, right? But the reality is, that sort of stinks. Right. I would like to play basketball again at some point. I don't know if that's going to be a thing. And all that stuff. So, it's okay to mourn. Things that you miss.
Right.
And I almost feel guilty, and I felt guilty saying things like this out loud. It's awkward for me to tell you this stuff, I think, because, I have everything to be grateful for. So shut up about not playing basketball. Your friend Andy doesn't ever walk again.
Right. That's actually one thing I'd like to also convey a message through our podcast, is that we tend to evaluate each other's grief or our pain next to in a comparison model. And we can't really do that. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you can't play basketball, or if you can't get out there and run bases with your son and help out with the little league or whatever it is, there is a grief and there is a mourning and there's a loss to that. And you are entitled to that mourning, and it is a mourning. So, is it you still are alive and you're here, and those are all wonderful things to be grateful for, but that doesn't minimize the fact that there is a loss that you've suffered as well. Yeah. So I feel like that's also a very important message of this podcast.
I think so too. And Ryan, like, I've been taking some notes and things of your conversation that we've had today, and seeing resilience everywhere. You think, what is resilience? And that's what this podcast is all about, is what is resilience? And several of the things you mentioned to me feel like examples of resilience, or how to be resilient. I look at resilience like a muscle. It's not a thing you just have or don't have. It's you work on it or don't work on it. And if you don't work on it, then it's not getting stronger. But you mentioned the support group. You said very first, by the time you even got to the hospital, you had people there. You had friends calling or texting. You had people helping your wife and kids at home. You had the brother that gave up his anniversary to remodel the bathroom. How great is a support group when you're going through something hard, whatever the something hard is. And it can be as simple as that call or that text, or it can be as grand as the brother doing physical remodeling on your home so that it can accommodate your body. You also mentioned surrendering, giving up the need to control what you can't control. I think we could all write books and books and books on how that really is like the number one secret to having a fulfilling life, is giving up the control that you just don't have. You can't control a lot. Now, there's a lot you can control. And
I think it's letting go of the
attitude.
perception of the control, right? We all think that we have an idea that we can control certain outcomes or certain things.
Or that things should be a certain way, or it was supposed to be that way. And when you spoke of how for you the image of Jesus Christ in that painting spoke to your soul, that said, you can surrender. I love the word surrender, because I feel like that's what my life has been since I lost Brent. It's been the art of learning to surrender. And to me, that is resilience. Surrendering what I can't control, surrendering my pride. I loved that you said you're not afraid to say no. Sometimes you just have to say no to things you can't do or don't want to put the energy into, or just know you shouldn't. And
I lied. It's not that I'm not afraid.
You do it anyway. I love that. You do it anyway. Even better. No, that's so true.
I still worry about it.
Resilience. No, and Ryan, I do too. Resilience is not no longer worrying or no longer wishing you had control. It's bucking up and doing it anyway, right? I love that you also said you're not afraid, or maybe you're afraid, but do it anyway, to say, hey, I need to talk to somebody. And that idea of being okay with not being okay, and not having to hide that, and not having to brush it under the rug and smile like everything's great all the time. I think these are wonderful features of resiliency. And I also love that you mentioned those milestones that you celebrated. And I think that's really important for all of us, whether it's a physical thing we're recovering from, or an emotional thing, or a financial thing, or whatever goals or dreams we might have. I think sometimes we look at the future and we have this big picture of what okay looks like, or success looks like, or eventually I'll be happily ever after someday looks like. And I think resiliency is the ability to celebrate those little milestones along the way. I mean, you being able to move both legs underwater and celebrating that, even though you still can't run on the basketball court. But not just, you know what I mean? But I see that as a resilience, as a beautiful ability to say, I'm going to look at the milestones. I'm not going to mark myself only from 0 to 100, because guess what? We'll all be depressed all day long.
Yeah.
I'm going to give myself those little victories. I'm going to mark those milestones. I'm going to pause and enjoy the progress I've made. And then I'm going to get back to work because I'm not satisfied with staying here. But let yourself have that grace. And it's the grace of God. It's the grace of yourself. It's being able to say, okay, we're maybe stronger than we were. I've learned what I didn't know yesterday. I'm coming through this on the other side. I'm better than I was. And having that be the victory, rather than wishing the puzzle could all be put back together the way it was before it was shattered, because everybody's got a puzzle in life that's shattered, right? But anyway, Rain, I just appreciate what you shared with us so much, that has helped me learn about resiliency through your words and your example and your story. And just this, especially you saying, okay, well, I'm not afraid of needing help, or I'm not afraid of this, but you know what? I'm going to just do it anyway. I'm going to do it anyway. And again, that's the idea of that muscle.
I love hearing
exercise.
This, because we're hearing it, and not to make this totally a gender thing, but I mean, societally, we kind of expect men to like buck up, be strong, suck it up, whatever.
Sure.
And I love hearing that it's not always easy for our men either. And I think that we need to sometimes understand that just because our boys are boys doesn't mean that they can't feel like, I can't do this right now or I need help. I think that that was one of the surprising things that I've raised 2 boys and 2 girls. And I look back and I wish sometimes that I could go back and reparent my boys a little bit, because I felt like sometimes I had expectations higher of them than I did of my girls. And I realized that it's a bunch of punk. It's not real, you know? So anyway, I appreciate you sharing that, because it's a very vulnerable thing to say as a man that says, sometimes I have to say no. And sometimes I have to ask for help. And that's huge. It's huge for women like me who are a type A personality who don't want to ask anyone for anything. And it's hard for men, no matter where they fit on that scale of personality types, especially in our society. So I appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty in sharing that with us. I think it's important. I'm excited to have you back on. I don't know if Jennie's had this conversation. I think I've mentioned it to you before, but you also had a very special experience where you have a men's group, and that you get together and have conversations about how to be a better dad is kind of how I've taken it. And this was actually something you did with Brent, Jennie's husband. And of course, he's no longer with us, but you guys still get together? Are you still doing that?
Yeah. So this is the Gentleman Project. And, and so some
you got a title for it. I was not aware.
Yeah. Kirk came up with this, really, Kirk Chug, probably a decade ago, longer than that. And really just out of frustration, is he has twin boys, and just frustration with societal evolution.
Yeah.
Is sort of screaming at his boys. They were pretty young at the time, but screaming at them that, good behavior doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And he actually just started a podcast, the Gentleman Project podcast, to talk about this stuff a little bit.
And it's brilliant. It is brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, we definitely want to have you all on and have another episode about that, because it kind of goes into what I really appreciate about what you shared with us regarding, men needing support too, and knowing when to ask for help. I don't know if you listened to a previous episode with Aaron Gabrielson. I know you know Aaron. But Aaron and Jen were on and talked about the loss of their son, Crew.
Oh, yeah.
And in it, there's a moment where she's talking about these angel moms who came after she lost Crew. And he said, hey, where are all the angel dads? Because he needed support too. And he really is honest and vulnerable in that episode as well about his need for support and him wanting to pay it back. So it'd be interesting to also, I'll have to get with him today to let him know about your project. But we really appreciate having you on today and sharing these things. And we definitely will follow up with you fairly soon. Hopefully we can get you guys together and do this podcast on the Gentleman Project as well. And just thank you so much for being honest and open with us and sharing with us today your journey.
Thank you. Love you both. And it's really hard to say no to either of you. So.
Well, good. We're grateful. We're grateful you're at least afraid to say no to that. So that works out great. But on a personal note, Ryan, I am so grateful for your friendship in my life, your friendship in my kids' lives, the friendship you offered to my husband when he was still here. And from the bottom of my heart, I'm grateful you're still alive. I'm grateful you lived through that. You mentioned the timing of your accident and the timing of Brent's death, and you two have a lot of common friends and are from the same community and things. And I remember thinking that, everything still felt so raw for us in my family and our community. And then to see you go through what you've gone through and to see the way you've championed through it just Makes me so grateful for you and your family. Proud of you. I know there's a lot of hard work that goes into being able to make those legs move underwater. It's not like they just put you there and magically they did what they did. But I, as a friend, as a deep family friend, I just want to let you know how much I love you and your family. I'm grateful you're here. I'm excited you're back in the legislature. Clearly, God has great work for you to do, and you're not going to let a few screws and stitches get in the way. So I'm excited to see what the next decades bring, and I'm just grateful that you are still with us and able to still influence and be influenced. So with that, we will say goodbye for today and look forward to the next time we've got you on. And for our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this episode and that you will give us a review and a rating wherever you listen to your podcast. If you or someone you know has a real life story that you're willing to share with us, would you please reach out to us and let us know? You can find us on Facebook or Instagram at Relentlessly Resilient, and you can email us at rrpodcast@ksl.com. And remember, no matter what you do today, please remember to be kind. You have no idea what people might be going through. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.